Okay, let's have a look through the videos we got submitted for the critiques. So the first one's kicking here. Great idea, thanks Paul. Here's a link to some of the clips from a workout the other day. My two questions would be, first, how do I build strength in the bottom position of the handstand push-up, as that is where I am currently struggling to make progress. And secondly, for a press to handstand, I can't seem to get my hips on top without significantly bending my arms. So I'd love your advice on how to work on that. Okay, let's have a look. Good strength in the handstand push-up. No issue at all with going up and down. And a pretty good in terms of one segment. So if we look at the one segment control from the shoulder to the feet and how that stands as one piece, as the reps go on, there's a little bit of collapsing, especially on the concentric as you go back up, so the body starts to buckle. So we really want to have a connection, especially for freestanding. So this connection between the feet and the shoulders is so important. Even if our body loses control or loses position, we need to be able to push out from that position. And you see how he does that really nicely. A little hack as well, see how the legs are crossed. That's a really good technique you can use if you do start to lose control or disengagement. It is a bit of a habit, so we don't want to do this all the time in terms of crossing the legs for the freestanding control, because it will become part of the movement and sort of really locks the hip flexor and things in. So I would try to use that only when you need to and not use it all the time. From a balance point of view, but again, definitely the strength is there. Okay, crow to handstand, we can go down quite nicely. Keeps it up a little bit, but that could be more of a balance thing. Okay, and if we look at the body position as you come down, so if we look at this one, there's a few different techniques happening here in terms of what's happening with balance. So when you go down, the nose is coming down towards the floor, and then let's see what was happening on this one. So you see the top of the head's coming down, and then when we come up, we're pushing and opening the shoulders a lot at the top. So there's a little bit of different variation in terms of how we're opening and closing the shoulders from different techniques, from different drills. So ideally, when we're working a skill, we want to try and have the same pathway, the same setup, the same technique as much as possible. Same with the crow, see how the nose is facing the floor, and then we've got a lot of extension. Now, extension isn't an issue, and that can help us get up because we can fall towards overbalance, but we just need to have a really good connection. So number one, I think increasing your handstand balance control with just some clean, static handstand holds would be really good. Okay, we've got like a planche position using the band. So I would definitely be to increase the base for that sort of movement. Planche leans, getting a lot more protraction. If we look at the amount he's having to lean forwards in this position, I would be focusing more on up and pushing through the scapula, so learning some real tight tuck positions. We don't want to be leaning too far forwards into a planche unless our legs are over here somewhere. So if our legs are over here, then it makes sense that we're leaning forwards. We don't want to overly lean forwards without having protraction as a base, as a foundation. So I would move that back and focus on that from that planchy, pressy type position. But going back to handstand push-ups, if we look at this technique, so we're going to a deficit, which is great, and then pushing back up again, but see how the head position is very different again, and how we're opening the shoulders is very different. There's a bit of a whip happening there. So what I would be looking at is taking this back to some more fundamental base positions to really focus on the bottom of the handstand push-up and making sure there's some consistency in the pathway and the positions throughout, and improving the handstand balance. So things I would be looking at doing. So if our goal is a handstand push-up, so ideally open shoulder position, nice tall one piece, and then as we come down, shoulders come forwards, feet come backwards, arms stay in on top of the elbows, so on top of the hands, head kisses the floor, and then I come back up again. Now notice where my head touches the floor. So it's this position here, everything stays one segment from the head all the way through. I'm not extending the neck, I'm not arching the body too much on the eccentric, because the goal is to have that clean position. Now it's not wrong to use extension, that can really help us to get out of the position, but from an eccentric point of view, we want to try and make it as clean as possible, so the down only. Now we might need to take that then back to a pike push-up. So exactly the same thing, open shoulders at the top, coming forwards with the shoulders,
Arms go for exactly the same pathway. Ideally, my torso is at the same angle as it would be in the real thing. Forehead touches, come back again. Constantly looking down towards the floor as my base. So making a strong foundation to go on top of. Exactly the same if I do those drills up against the wall. So eccentric, we're trying to mimic exact that pathway. So everything in a straight line, coming down exactly the same, head kisses the floor. Now if we can't get back up, we could walk back up, or we could use an eccentric only, so I come down, hold for a few seconds, and then find a way of exiting back out. And I could do that on the floor, I could do it from a deficit, so I could put my hands up on something. So again, trying to focus on the parts where I'm getting stuck. So for him, it's the bottom position, so I'm coming down, exactly the same. See the one segment for the eccentric, hold, show control, come back out. All of the exercises are trying to mimic exactly the same pathway, and where I'm struggling in a section, so for him it's that bottom position, I'm going to make the exercise easier by the pike push-ups, but I'm going to mimic the same pathway and hold or spend lots of time in that position. And then for that planche type movement, really focus on external rotation, real strong protraction, planche leans, so really rounding that upper back as much as I can through there. And then if I go into a tuck position, so I hold, it's all about pushing up with a little bit of forwards and really doming that upper back. Okay, let's look at the next one. So this is my press attempt. Lifting legs from the floor is problematic. Straightening at the top, saved by the wall. Lowering something of its own. Okay, let's have a look. This is from George. Okay, so we're using the P-bars. Strong position in the upper back. Nice strong base, nice tall position on the wall, so really good one segment, into the wall, rolling down, coming back up. Okay, so we're pretty good there in terms of everything that's happening. For me, it's happening very fast. So even from an assessment point of view, it's like tricky to see exactly what's happening. So time under tension throughout the movement is really, really important for the skills. We don't want to have any gaps. And we also want to try as best we can not to rely on things as much as possible. So assistance. So at the moment, there's a lot of help from the wall in terms of a lot of forward lean. So it's trying to work out the minimal amount of wall that we need to use to create the time under tension through the full pathway. Now there is some good strength there because he's going up. If we watch how he went up then, so this part here, see how he's holding a really deep, tight tuck position. So we have some really good upper back shoulder strength, and you can see that by how straight and strong through this position is, and in the top, how tall the position is. So there's some really good foundations here, but I think we're just relying on that forward movement, relying on the wall a little bit too much. So let's put together exactly what he's using, and I would go through how I would break it down and make it a little bit more cleaner to get a bit more time under tension in those positions. So we can set up very similar. Let's use the bars. Okay, now we've got a very similar setup to what he was using. So we're going to use the wall, we're going to use the P-bars, we're going to use the plates. Now, ideally when we go into a eccentric press handstand, we want to mimic the pathway as much as possible. So the goal we're aiming for here is to come from this position, lift up, take the legs around the outside and finish in that handstand. And then the eccentric, exactly the same on the way back down. So the goal is to get as close to that as possible. Now obviously when you're working towards a press handstand, you can't do the thing. So making the drills identical to that is nearly impossible. So what we need to do is work with what you have available. So we have a certain amount of flexibility, we have a certain amount of strength, and we have a certain amount of balance. Now from the video we can see that he has very good strength, he has very good balance, but I'm not 100% sure of what flexibility he has. We're going to assume that his flexibility is medium, okay? So medium means that we need to cheat a little bit in terms of not having super clean positions all the way around the outside. We might need to frog the legs a little bit, and that's sort of what he's showing and what he's doing already. So number one, we need to check with the wall drill, how close can we get to the wall and get the toes to the floor? So I'm going to go pretty close with the hands to the wall to start with. I'm going to go to the wall, and then I'm going to come down as slow as possible, rolling the spine down. I might need to frog the legs
and I'm just going to find where I can get my toes to. So now see straight away, I've got my toes to here. So that tells me that these P-bars are actually too long to get my feet to here, or actually bring my feet off there. I need to actually just bring my feet off here for the start and the finish of the movement, so I can get rid of these plates. Now, if he's using shorter P-bars, or his feet on the eccentric, the best he can do comes to the plate, his setup is perfect. So we're trying to find the best distance, or the closest you can be to the wall, and get those toes to touch very, very lightly. Now, you'll probably need to play with your pathway, so how much you bend the knees, how much you round the back, the distance your hands are from the wall, to allow yourself to come down slowly. So there's going to be some bit of exploration there. But once you can come down really slowly, that's going to tell you your setup for going back up as well. So now if my feet are on the edge of the bars where they were for the eccentric, I'm now just going to set up exactly the same. I'm going to take the head to the wall, and then the upper back, now pull in and bring my legs up exactly the same. So I could get up there. Now if I can't get up there, so I can do the slow eccentric, that's exercise number one. Exercise number two, the concentric, I might need to bring the hands slightly further back, bring the feet slightly further back to allow me now to get that concentric. But we want to have the eccentric and the concentric ideally as close together as possible, and then coming off the wall. So that would be drill number one if we're not using too much balance. Now if we have better balance, we could do exactly the same thing, but do the eccentric where I'm hardly on the wall. So now I'm balancing the handstand or using the wall a little bit. Now I open to a froggy straddle position, or whatever I need to do for the pathway, touch the wall, come down a little bit less on the wall as I come down, and finish with control. So that's going to assess how much balance control I have on the eccentric. I could do exactly the same on the concentric and just see how much balance and control I have on the way up. So again, set up close to the wall, but now not touching the wall. Can I pick my feet up? Can I go around the outside? I might need to use the wall as I go up, but there I got most of the concentric without using the wall. So then with that information, I have the eccentric, what control I have through that. I have the concentric, what control, what strength I have to go back up, but I also have the balance assessed. If there's no balance there and I'm just falling all over the place, I need to use the wall just enough to create good movement through, or good pathway, and not be dropping at all. And separately, I need to be doing lots of work on my handstand balance. And then as all those things start to progress and get stronger and stronger, the position's going to get cleaner and cleaner, closer and closer, and the eccentric, the concentric, and the freestyle inversion are all going to start to merge together until you get that magic press. Okay, next one. Hey Paul, I'm linking a short of my attempt I did today. It's not my best, but I felt in control for the majority of it. Not really sure what ended up underbalancing me. My body line doesn't look great. Hopefully the filming angle isn't too bad. I need to get an actual tripod so I don't have to tilt my phone upwards so much. If I can film another attempt on Tuesday, I will send that over as well if the deadline isn't up. So let's just see, no, there's no other ones there. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, this is a very, very good handstand. So if you see how he set up very nicely, shoulders were on top of hands, the focal point was there, and then he kicked. So let's see again. He wasn't happy, but I think it was a nice hold. So hands, shoulders on top, focal point, kicking up just shy of the handstand, which is perfect. Now it is very stacked, which looks pleasing, but it could end up in the hips and the feet just being a little bit too over the top. So basically in terms of critiquing that as a standalone handstand, I think it's a perfect handstand. I wouldn't play with that too much. However, what I would do is start to assess what's your balance window. So how big is our gap or our ability to rebalance? So there was a great setup with the video. The hands were on the floor, the shoulders were on top of the hands. The focal point was all fixed before the kick up happened. The kick up put the hips and the legs on top of the shoulders and the hands, so on top of the base, and he stayed there nicely. Actually, his was better than mine then. I'd done a little rebalance. But the only thing was the feet and the hips were a little bit high as the hole went on. Now what that does is it makes the position a little bit like holding like this. So posturally wise, it looks really good, but it's just a little bit top heavy. So I prefer to have the handstand back just a touch towards underbalance.
because we all tend to have a bit bigger rebalance for our underbalance, especially when we start to get a bigger window of balance. That gets a bit confusing, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So I can lean back here a long way and feel quite comfortable. It uses a bit of strength, but I've got quite a bit of movement towards my underbalance. My overbalance is always like I'm on my tiptoes and I'm gonna fall. There's not much I can do apart from stepping forwards. So if we can hold back slightly and have the weight a little bit back in the underbalance, we should feel like we've got a little bit more movement. Now, in terms of his ability or what he should do to improve that, for everyone, increase in your balance window. So how far you can move in that direction and how far you can move in that direction is so important. So we need to assess that. So if he kicks up into his handstand and just tests how far can he go towards his underbalance, and then how far can he go towards his overbalance. Now, if that is a problem, as soon as you go that way, you fall down. As soon as you go that way a little bit, you fall down. We need to increase that balance window by using the wall drills. Now, the way we do that is we kick up to the wall, back to wall. I push through the fingers, make the body very tall, and then I pull away into a handstand, and then I go back to the wall. So this is going to increase my control, my conditioning, and my strength in the overbalance of the handstand. So I'm going from the handstand to my overbalance and back again. Now I can increase that range by going further away from the wall. So that's going to allow me to go towards the wall, touch, go back again. And I can slowly increase that from a training point of view, or I can increase it and assess how far can I go to the wall with control touch and go back to my handstand for repetitions. I can do exactly the same this way around for the underbalance. So there, now I'm going to pull from the wall using my shoulders. I'm going to reach up to the handstand, and now I'm training my underbalance from the handstand to the wall. Exactly the same, and then I have a distance that I've assessed, or a distance that I can train that's this big, which means my handstand window is this big. Most people, when they're learning to handstand, it's this big or even smaller, and that's why they're inconsistent of their catch, because they've got to try and get in that sweet spot and stay there. If I'm this big for a window balance, I can move around in that. But like I say, his handstand looks very, very good. I wouldn't change much with it, apart from having the hips and feet back a little bit. So I would suggest increasing that balance window with those two drills would work very well for him. Okay, next one. Hi Paul, I hope I made the deadline. My video link is below, and my question is on how to catch the drop to a bent arm planche from handstand. I can hold a bent arm planche for about 10 seconds. From what you see in your video, do I look like I need to get even stronger in the bent arm planche, or is it a technique issue, hands positioning? Okay, so a bit more of a strength-based one here. Okay, so there's a few things that we would need to check here from an assessment point of view. So we need to check how strong is the bottom position. The lowering down is pretty good, so nice and controlled, and he understands the body positioning, so we're taking the shoulders quite far forwards. Now obviously we're guessing a little bit here, so we don't know 100% what all the stages are like for him, so I'm assuming he has handstand push-ups, because everything looks nice and strong. The body's coming down as one segment, so the shoulder to the feet is staying as one piece. He's rotating the hands really nicely, which is bringing the elbows in, and he says he has a hold at the bottom. So the goal here is to go from the handstand position, come down nice and slowly to the bent arm planche position. So here, and then hold for time. If you can't achieve that yet, we do need to check the individual components, but the other thing we can do is just regress it slightly. So there's a few ways we can regress that movement. Number one, we could increase the height of the hands. So by doing that, what it's done is allowed me to take my head now below my hands, which is much easier to scoop down into that position. The other thing I can do to make it easier is to shorten the lever arm. So I could go into a straddle or even a tuck position, which reduces the intensity quite a bit and allows me then to hopefully do repetitions of that, so it works really well as a training drill. So you do exactly the same thing, but as you get closer to the bottom, you can change your position, which allows you to come into that position much easier. Now from watching the video, what I suggest he does is set up something like this, so raise the hands up, do some shorter positions, make sure he can do that for repetitions. Do say 3 to 5 cluster reps of that height.
then you could either decrease the height or just start to extend the position and see if you can get 1 to 2 cluster reps per set. And then once you've done that, have a go at some full attempts like you're doing already, because you're super close. And that way you're training the actual skill, but you're also getting enough repetitions of drills, so there's enough time under tension on the easier variations. So you're also just making the movement stronger and stronger and getting more conditioning throughout the full pathway. Okay, I'm currently down 6 to 7 months in a handstand push-up journey, but I have plateaued. I don't know if I can pronounce that word correctly. Plateaued? Plateau. You're in a plateau. Plateaued? Yeah. At 3 rep max. I want to increase my rep count. Any advice will be appreciated. Here's the clip. Let's have a look at these handstand push-ups. Okay, so we've got good strength, good balance. So the only thing that's happening here, see how his hips are moving? So his legs and his torso are doing like a separate movement. So again, an open and closing the hip as you come up and down. Now, he's actually using that to help him do the handstand push-ups, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do the same, but the way I do it is I connect my feet and my shoulders as one piece, and I arch the body slightly as I get tired. So if we look at the different variations here, now the reason I'm saying this is we need to get clever with our handstand push-ups for more repetitions. So yes, strength is important, but we can see that he already has the strength. So what we need to do is work on the technique to make it more efficient so the body's working together. If you look at every repetition, he's hinging at the hip like this. So when we go down in the handstand push-up,
ideally our body stays one piece. So shoulder to feet stays the same. Now to get back up, it's easier to use a little bit of overbalance like that. So we want to be pulling the body slightly up and over to pull us up out of the position. That's seen very commonly in Croda handstand. So you can see there that my body is shifting in towards that overbalance, and I do that and push up at the same time. So the same thing happens in our repetitions. Now ideally a clean position does this. So exactly the same thing is happening, but the connection between the shoulder and the feet stays as one piece and pulls us up. And now another technique is to use the hips like he's doing, or another technique as I do, as I get tired, I arch the body up to go into like a banana position on the way back up to curve up. Now what happens, the more repetitions we do, the more we're going to need to use that assistance to help us up. And the issue is when the assistance becomes more and more, especially if we're hinging at the hip, it then becomes problematic. And then when you try and push back up, you pull yourself up in a folded position, and it ends up using either lots of energy or you fall out of balance. Exactly the same can happen with the banana type effect that I use. So what we want to try and do is minimize that as much as possible, especially on the eccentric coming down, and then only use it as the reps go on. So instead of it happening too much at the 3rd repetition, we want it to happen too much at the 6th repetition, then the 9th repetition. So the cleaner we can make those first reps, but still making them as efficient as possible, the easier it's going to be to do more repetitions. So when I come down, so in this position, I'm trying to lock in shoulder to feet in a slight hollow body position. And then when I come back up, I'm trying to do exactly the same, back out again. Exactly the same, back out again. I don't want to be using the assistance now to get me back out. I don't want to be using it too early. I want to use it when I get stuck. So more of that is more habit. So we need to teach that habit, locking in the hollow body position, coming down, coming back up. And then as soon as the reps become challenging, then I'm just going to start to use my technique to help me, the overbalance, just a little bit, and then slowly add it on instead of using it from the first rep onwards. So cleaner eccentrics, use the assistance less on the first 1 to 2 repetitions, plus working some deficit handstand push-ups will help as well. If we make the movement harder, then pull back to the easier one on the floor, that just means we're going to have even more capacity to work with. Now, if you're similar and you're struggling with 2 to 3 repetitions, or even struggling with that first repetition, it could actually be a strength deficit. If it's a strength deficit, we need to try and fill that gap with around 3 to 5 repetitions of an easier progression, like the wall handstand push-ups, the pike push-ups, or even overhead presses. But looking at that video, I wouldn't say he's lacking strength, it's more that body position. But I will be doing more of these, and if you want to be included in the next video and don't mind being featured on YouTube, stick any video links down in the comments. Now, I really enjoy doing the video critiques. This is what I do for my online coaching clients. If you're interested in coaching on my app, link is down in the description, and I'll speak to you next time.